Welcome to the Emotional and Mental Health Summit. My name is Dolores Andrew Gavin and I'm your host. I am the founder of The Mythic Fairy, a dedicated children's website for all things emotional health. I'm also the author of 2 children's books, an empowerment and assertive coach, a podcaster, blogger and mum. I have 2 reasons, I guess, for doing this summit and bringing it together. And firstly, it's to support the whole conversation that's already there around emotional and mental health. And secondly, I also want to bring tools to people to show them that, I suppose, firstly, that there are tools that we can use to help us, whether that be learning something like emotional freedom technique or helping ourselves to step into our power by finding our voice. There are lots of different tools I'll share on this summit from the speakers that will be speaking. And also, of course, you also will hear from people who have been on a journey themselves. So it's always good to know that we're not alone and that others have travelled the same path possibly as ourselves. I hope that you enjoy the summit. Thanks for being here. Welcome to our conversation on all things mental and emotional health. Today I'm delighted to be joined by the lovely and beautiful Barbara Brennan. Barbara is an artist, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a friend, a suicide survivor, and an expert by experience in recovery and wellness. She's also a public speaker and facilitator who has worked with seechange, the National Stigma Reduction Partnership, since 2009, and took over managing the project this year. And in the last 10 years, she's presented and facilitated all over the country to all kinds of groups and organisations, and spoken on national television and on national radio, and has appeared on the TV to stir conversations. And that's what it's all about, I think. So on that note, Barbara, you are so welcome to the conversation.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm delighted to have a chat with you, and particularly on this topic as well, and especially with the month of May coming, with mental health being the main thing that we're going to be talking about. So it's wonderful to start the conversation with you.
Yeah, and it's great because this project has kicked off around this month. It's been percolating in my own head, and so it's great to do it when we know that people are going to be more mindful, I guess, of the whole conversation. And I suppose that leads to the first kind of question that I wanted to talk to you about, because I know that you have experience in both working and being a survivor yourself of getting through mental health issues, for want of a better word, I guess. So I suppose one of the questions that I did want to ask you was, what do you find are the common beliefs that people have around mental health? And I suppose also in answering that, looking at mental health and in a way that sort of that will be good for people that both suffer with it and for those that have no idea what this whole conversation is about.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's still about perceptions, and it's one of the things. I've been working with the National Stigma Reduction Campaign for nearly 10 years, so I've been an ambassador and I've done all these different things, and I'm now full-time working with them. The purpose of that is to understand stigma and to try and change attitudes towards it. And I think this is one of the things that people, when we hear the word stigma, we kind of go, yeah, I know what that is. But actually we don't, because we don't know what it feels like. I'm not going to want to sit down and learn about stigma and have big conversations about it. And yet the damage that stigma is doing is enormous. And it's one of the things that that's part of the thing we need to get to. So the kind of things that are stigmatizing are the ideas that people never get better. That, once you've been diagnosed with a mental health condition or a mental illness, that you're never going to get better, that's you written off, and that you won't be able to cope, and that you won't be able to do things, and that, that's now you. That's not true. People can and do recover. People can and do go on to live full and meaningful lives. And lots of people are living every day with mental health difficulties and are managing the rest of their lives just fine.
And that's wonderful to have you on for that reason. I think it's so wonderful for you to be able to share that story, because we can talk all day about, and we can Google, and we can do, all sorts of searches on these words, stigma, beliefs, but really, a story coming from someone like yourself that has such a wonderful story to tell, I think is just so much more beneficial for people.
Thank you. And it is exactly that. It's about having conversations, and it's about stories. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've seen a shift in the last 10 years because of the work seechange does. And it's about having that conversation, making it real, making it about the me and I in the conversation, because it's one thing I do see when we talk about stigma, when we talk about mental health. When we talk about mental health, normally we jump to mental illness. And when we
Yes.
jump to mental illness, we also jump to severe mental illness and
Yes.
enduring mental illness and hospital and heavy medication and strange things that we can't comprehend, or that we've heard, or that we've made up stories about what those things are, or we've looked online and we found out what all the information is on Google. So now we know what that is. And that's one of the difficult things. So understanding those things, that's actually the piece that we need to challenge. So what we need to challenge is, what do I think about this? When I hear somebody is struggling, does that mean I have to write them off? Or when I hear that somebody is struggling, am I judging them in some way? And the thing that we need to change is that if it was about something else, if I knew somebody was struggling because they had lost somebody, or if I knew that they were struggling because they were sick with cancer or any other illness, would I act differently? And if so, why? And that's essentially where stigma comes in. So that's what we're trying to get to. And it's one of the things that the conversations that we've been having over the last 10 years really shows us. When we break down what stigma is and we start saying, well, actually, stigma is silence. Stigma is all your other conversations dropping out. So when we're afraid to talk to somebody who is struggling with their mental health, because of their mental health, we're afraid we're going to say the wrong thing. And I think that's actually the truth, that it's fear that's stopping us have conversations. But what also happens in that moment is that we stop talking about everything else. We don't talk about TV. We don't talk about a book we've read. We don't talk about a party we went to. We don't talk about the weather. So all of the conversations get lost because we're so afraid and so anxious that we're going to say something about this mental health thing.
Yeah, it's
We
so
just
true.
that we need to find that actually it's our own fear and our own judgment that we need to get to and say, that's not where we are and it's not what we're talking about. What we're trying to say to people is, this is a human being who's struggling with something. So why don't we approach it from that way and see what happens? I think the interesting thing is, if we think about stigma around mental health and mental illness, if we go back to where it came from, I don't think, like, certainly I'm not aware of a stigma course that you can go and learn how to put stigma on somebody or do stigma to somebody. And
Yeah.
yet it's something that happens all the time. It's something that we do nearly instinctively.
And
So
isn't it funny that you say that? Because, like, you know, around our physical health, or, I mean, there's none of this stigma really. I mean, we might have our beliefs that you talked about there, you know, how we perceive things, and that about maybe our, you know, our if we want to go to the gym or whatever, we might have our perceptions, but there isn't the stigma about, I don't know. It's amazing that it's developed, as you say, and I'm interested in this part of the conversation, as in how it did start and how it has developed.
yeah, and I think that's the thing. So if we think about, I didn't go somewhere to learn how to stigmatize somebody. I didn't hear about it from a friend talking about it. I didn't grow up with the words about stigma. And yet I would have had fear around those things. So it was the kind of things of, you know, oh, well, you know, we don't talk about that. Or, you know, that we know that there's a guy living down the road and, you know, he's not well.
Yeah.
Or, she suffers with her nerves, or there's lots of those kind of things that we grew up with. And I'm sure anybody listening to this conversation can think of those things. And that's before we think about the portrayal of mental illness in the past. And certainly if we go back 10 or 15 years, the kind of headlines that we saw were so sensational and quite often misleading and wrong, and the kind of things that we saw and we read, we believed that. And so we understood and we believed that people suffering with mental health conditions were dangerous. We
That is
believed
so true.
that they were murderers, we believed that they were psychotic, all of these things. And that's not true. There are so many different people that never experience a psychotic episode. And yet when we think of mental illness, that's where we go. We go to, this person must be dangerous, they must be crazy, they must be all of these things. So if we start in that place, and if you go back even But we consider mental illness what happened when you got sick. You got locked away, you got segregated from society, you got separated, and you became worse than. And quite often, even if you go to the like of a prison, there's a separate place within the prison for somebody struggling with their mental health. So you're worse than everybody else in society. And you're written off. And that's the bit that if we take our history and we come from there, and then we add the fear of, I don't know about this person because I understand all of this stuff, even though I've never considered what I think about it. That's what's been fed to me over years. And I have never really had a conversation and understood the truth behind it. So the truth is that most people go through periods of difficulty in our lives. And one of the ways that I try and help people understand that is to ask them, have you ever been happy? Have you ever been sad? Have you ever been really angry? Have you ever been heartbroken or disappointed or hurt? Have you ever worried? And those are the things that if we start saying, yes, I recognize that, I understand what that feels like. If we go to a time when we were struggling, when we were worried, when we felt sick from worry, when we were really, really stressed, that is the beginning of the conversation of, well, if you don't look after those things, that can lead to mental illness. Because generally how mental illness is diagnosed in the beginning stages, it's looking at, is this enduring? How long has this been happening? Is this having an effect on your daily functioning? So if you're not managing to do the things you regularly do, if your mood is regularly low, and if you are struggling to perform the normal things that you do, and if you're worried and you're stressed and you're anxious and all of those feelings on a regular daily basis, that's the start of looking at, well, actually, maybe there's a diagnosis here. So if we take a step back and say, well, maybe if I minded myself and if I dealt with stress and if I dealt with worry and if I did some of those things, maybe I could prevent myself going down a road that I don't need to go.
Oh,
Or
that's
maybe,
absolutely wonderful, Barbara. Sorry for interrupting you, but like that's wonderful. What a great place to start. And as you're saying that, it amazes me because my son is doing his junior cert this year, and the book that he's doing is To Kill a Mockingbird. And in that story, there is this person that does have a mental illness, and it's based around that, and he is locked away. So I just found it interesting the parallel where I suppose that does show an ignorance, I suppose, for want of a better word. To this, isolation, as you mentioned, this belief we have from the past. It's amazing.
it is. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have, is to understand that we have thoughts, we have judgments, and we have feelings about something that we haven't particularly chosen to learn about. We
Yeah.
haven't really understood that we have learned this. And this is the bit that I find really interesting, that if I ever say to somebody, would you feel comfortable to sit down and talk to somebody who had just tried to kill themselves? That's a really, really tough conversation. And most people kind of go, I don't know. And I think their fear really is about, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I can't support this person? What if I say the wrong thing and then I cause them to try and end their life? The thing is that talking about suicide doesn't create suicide. It doesn't push people to want to kill themselves. And actually, the more conversations we can have with people who are struggling and who are vulnerable, the more chance we have of changing their mind, the more chance we have of understanding better and as connecting it with that person like a human being.
Oh
Because
yeah, absolutely. Creating
that's
that
it.
moment, yeah, of I think always to that, just where you stop and you just create, where all the magic happens in the present moment. We're coming to the now. When you meet someone and you're present with someone with that conversation, you're hopefully getting them to be present in the conversation with you, and causing that gap, I always think, between what we're feeling and between what we're projecting into the future about what maybe they might want to do, and they're not stuck in the past about worrying something. It's that present moment and having the conversation one-on-one with someone.
It is, and I think that makes a huge difference. And people are starting to understand about mindfulness now, and they're
Yeah,
starting to use this concept. And it's one of the shifts that I have seen in the last 10 years, that the conversation is changing. So, for example, we did research through Seechange in 2017, and I'll give you the link for all of the different statistics that
brilliant.
are. But currently, we say that 4 in 10 people would actually conceal that they have a mental health difficulty from people that they love or that they work with, or just in general. We say that 46% of under 35s would conceal. So that's more than half the population of Ireland, which is huge. However, we have turned around and say that 66% of people would work with somebody who was struggling with the mental health condition. And this is where we're starting to understand that actually, that person is still a person. And it's one of the things at the beginning you read out, I'm a sister, I'm an aunt, I'm a friend, an artist, I am lots of things.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I'm a suicide survivor doesn't mark me for the rest of my life. And actually, at this point, it's become one of my strongest points, because I have now lived 10 years off medication. I bought my own house, I've run my own business, and I am now managing the National Stigma Reduction Campaign. That's a journey that has happened because I have put the effort in, but it shows that recovery is possible. It shows the hope. It shows...
It's an inspiration for all of us, I think. It is an inspiration for having this conversation with you. And that's what I love it, as I said earlier. It's this conversation with someone that's been there, done that, and, can really show the difference, how looking at our beliefs. And I think it's admirable that you go out now and you share your medicine with other people.
Well, thank you. And I think that's the thing. It was a matter of, the year I came off life support, I realized that something had to change. And then I realized everything had to change. And I think that was the beginning. I had 15 years of really severe mental ill health. I was hospitalized many times for long periods of time. I had lots of attempts on my life. That's not something that we feel that people get better from, or that people can turn their lives around from. And when we meet somebody in that stage, it's so out of our concept and feels so far away that we don't know how to help. And the thing is that in the moments when I was at my worst, the things that made the difference to me sometimes were, friends coming around and just sitting with me. Maybe I wasn't able to have a conversation, but they would just come and sit. They might sit and watch TV, they might sit and read, they might sit and look out the window, but they were showing me that they were there and they weren't putting pressure on me. Or somebody would say, come on, we go out for a walk. And I'd say, I don't really feel like it. And they'd say, well, why don't we go? And if you don't feel like it when we're out, we'll come back.
Right.
And
yeah.
It's that thing of, if I wait for feeling like it, I probably never will.
Mm-hmm.
But if I do it, momentum then creates that continuum that we're going to keep doing it. And so sometimes that thing of fake it till you make it, I found that really helpful, that the days I didn't feel like eating, or I didn't feel like moving my body, or I didn't feel like being positive, those were the days that I had to do it twice as much, and I started leaning into different kinds of things. So when we talk about diet and exercise, most people assume that means, going on a lettuce diet and being down the gym every 5 minutes. In my idea, that's not what it is. Diet is actually understanding nutrition and understanding the things that I eat have an impact on my mood. It has an impact on my energy. It has an impact on the way my body works. It has an impact on my sleep. It has an impact on how I function. All of those things. So if I started looking at, maybe there are certain foods, like we know that sugar spikes our energy and does lots of things. So maybe I need to look at, do I take too much of that? Do I drink enough water? It can be really, really simple changes. And I think that's the biggest thing, that it doesn't have to be huge changes, really, really small changes done and just consistently done, and then added on layer by layer. That's how I got better. And that's what I do to keep myself well, that I do all of these things. And when I start slipping and I start not doing yoga and not eating great, I do start feeling not so good.
Okay.
But I know things now. And that's the thing, that it's not that, I've now recovered for the rest of my life. Everybody has instances that
yes.
come, or things that are stressful, or different things. So, we hear about life being a journey, and that's exactly what this is. It's about, if I continuously do the things that make me feel well, then I will feel well. If I don't do them, well, then there's a fair chance I won't. So
I love that, Barbara. I love that. And there again, it's like that. It's the present again, isn't it? Dealing with how we feel at the present. Is there enough done with explaining, I guess, to people about emotional health? Because emotional health is what I do with children. I've written 2 books, and it's all about, there again, it's understanding the emotional realm and how the feelings around it. Is that something that you would consider would be good for people to learn in schools?
Massively.
Programs like that.
I do. And I think even, when we're talking about children learning, we also need to educate adults, because the amount of people that I've spoken through the workplace program with seechange, I'm talking to people who are really accomplished in their lives, and yet this is still a difficult conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of educating people, if we can take the age out of it, I think everybody needs that. obviously, if we can talk to children and help them from the start, it's going
Yeah,
to impact on their lives in such a positive way. It's going to help them through all the difficulties of growing up as a kid into teenage years and all of that. But it also means that then when they get to adulthood and they get these different stresses, that they'll understand how to use it. But quite
absolutely.
often, some of the things that I see for children, we say they're so basic and so simple, and yet a lot of them I kind of go, well, actually, I think everybody you could do with that. Like I saw a post the other day that was saying, you know, you should congratulate your child if they've done something well. You should make sure that you tell them that it's been a good thing. You should ask them what they're interested in. You should ask them to show you how to do something. You should show them how to do something. You should make time to have conversations just about stuff. And I'm sitting there going, that's amazing. And if we could have those conversations with kids, I think they would feel easier to come when they have a different. But I also feel that those are conversations that we could have at work, or that we could have
True.
with our friends. So
Yeah,
everything you've just said is valid and relevant for all of us. But I
sure.
think at this point we do have a big responsibility to look after the children of our future and say, you know, they have other stuff coming up that we didn't have, social media and all that stress, that we have a responsibility to look after them and to help them understand how to get around that. But certainly there is so much about emotional health. Like I was saying, if we can understand the
Mm,
whole concept of mental health or mental illness in the idea that I have feelings and my feelings affect how I behave.
hmm.
If we can get our head around that and say, well, actually, if I'm in a bad mood, I might not eat properly, or I might not sleep well. I might be a little bit ratty and I might snap out at somebody, or I might feel a little bit stressed, and maybe that has a physical impact. Maybe I'll get a headache, maybe I'll be a little bit shaky, maybe my stomach will hurt. Understanding those little things and starting to notice it in that way, maybe we'll respond differently. And it's about responding rather than reacting. So
Absolutely. I love that. They're reacting and they're responding. Barbara, that's wonderful. Where can people get more information about Sea Change? Like, let's say if somebody really like is listening to this conversation and wants to reach out and get help, get more information, whether there's someone that is in a workplace, an employer, and, you know, wants to start this conversation for themselves to look at how they, you know, deal with their employees. How can they get in contact with Sea Change? Is that the first place that you would send people?
yeah, absolutely. So Sea Change is a stigma reduction partnership, and what we're interested in is having conversations about the topic of mental health and the reduction of stigma. And the purpose is to save lives, because essentially the tagline is one conversation at a time. The reason we want to have one conversation is to get a difference in our conversations, but essentially to get to the point where we can talk about mental health. So
Yes.
seechange.ie, and that's seechange, and the email is info@seechange.ie, and you can get lots of information about the different programs that we run, the workplace program, our ambassadors. The other really exciting thing is that it's nearly May, and we are going to be running the Green Ribbon Month. We have 500,000 ribbons to go around. Oh, look at you, good woman, there
I
you
have my
go.
green ribbon on.
You have it. You have it. And this is it. So that green ribbon is going to be available. We have 500,000 of them going around the country. You can get them in AIB branches. You can get them in boot stores. You can get them in air stores. I think that all the major Irish rail stations are going to have them, and some of the local libraries are teaming up. On top,
Fantastic.
lots of communities have got them. So it might be your local GIA. It might be the shops in your town. Look out for any buildings lit up green during the month. If you see a green building anywhere in the country, they are saying we want to talk about mental health. So
Fantastic.
yeah, it's great. So if people want to get involved in different events, again, we'll have a calendar and we'll have information going up on our website. We also have, we're on Twitter and we're on Facebook as well, and Sea Change IRL for both of those, so people can connect with us with that. If they want to see anything and they want to show us what they're doing during May, if they use the hashtags End the Stigma and also Green Ribbon IRL, that way we can see everything. And we really, really want to have conversations about how we can change our future and how we can be there for each other. So that's really what Sea Change is about. So we would love to start conversations in May.
That's phenomenal, Barbara. Thank you so much. And is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you'd like to leave us with? Like, it could be something personal, it could be just a little nugget of gold for us.
Well, I think there's two things. The first thing I think is don't wait. It's the biggest thing is that when we have a thought or we have a fear, we then think about it, and we think into a problem sometimes. So if we have a split second of, I don't know if I need help on this, that should be the answer. If you have that question, you might need some help. It might be having a chat with your pal. It might be having a chat with somebody you don't know. It might be lifting the phone to a service. So, for example, Samaritans 116 123, they are a 24/7 service. You don't have to have a mental illness to ring them. You don't have to be suicidal. It might be that you are pissed off after having a bad day at work. It is a place for people to listen to you and to help you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we have a service on yourmentalhealth.ie, and they have county by county information about lots of different services in the country. And so my other nugget is, don't wait, even though that was the same one, it's don't wait to find the information. So if you are not in a space where you're struggling at the moment, now is the perfect time to find out, well, if I needed help, where would I go? Or if I knew somebody who needed help, where would I go? And write down that information and have it somewhere where you know you can get it. Because that way then, when the time comes, because it always does come, you know where it is, and it's not that stressful panic of, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle this. You've already got that information.
Absolutely. And you know what? We all have mental health, don't we? You know, and I mean, like, it's the way I look at it now, as I am getting more involved in the conversation too. You know, it's not something like we will all have times that we'll be up and down. You know, it's not just, I think, yeah, like as you said at the beginning of the conversation, it's not always looking at mental illness. It's looking at our mental health on a day-to-day basis, and that can change. We can have ups and downs. We can be going through things in our life that are, it could be grief, it could be anything. And that could be the start of something for us if we don't look after our mental health, should I say.
That's absolutely it. And I think that's the thing. If we can understand that and start thinking about, you know, maybe if I had the flu, if somebody asked me how I was feeling, how would I respond? I probably wouldn't go into all the details of what was happening because of the flu, but I'd probably say, oh, I don't feel great. That's what we want to get to with mental health.
I love it. Yeah.
You can just say, you don't have to tell them everything, but to be able to say, I don't feel great, and then continue on with your work. The weight that is lifted by being able to say that, that's incredible. And that's essentially where we're getting to, because you have regular life and regular busyness. Then you have mental illness on top of that. And then you have stigma. And that's the bit. Stigma is the bit that's killing people, because sometimes we get used to dealing with the illness or the difficulty or the stress, and we're managing that. What we don't manage is how not to have a conversation and have to carry the weight of, this thing is happening to me and I don't feel great and I have to pretend all the time. It's exhausting. Yeah. So don't wait, have a conversation. In the same way, if you see somebody and you notice that they are not doing great, offer them a cup of tea. Ask them if there's something that you can do to help, or, you know, give them a compliment, but be genuine about it. And it's that human connection that can change everything, because you don't know the last time that somebody spoke to that person, or you don't know what difficulty they're going through. And quite often when somebody is negative towards us, or they're struggling with something, it's nothing to do with us, the way they treat us. It's to do with what's going on with them. So to have more kindness and compassion is huge.
Yes, and that's something I actually always start off with kids, and I'm in schools as well. As like, it's that you don't know what happened to that other child before they left for school this morning, and it's like, and you mentioned the word reactive as well, and it's like they're reactive to something that you say, but it's not you personally. And I think it's that putting a bubble around ourselves at times and not letting other people's stories influence us, because boy, they can. Barbara, thank you so much for the conversation. I could stay here forever talking to you, but we're going to go back and have another conversation again towards the end of May, so that you can tell us some wonderful, the stuff that has happened and the conversations that have started, and some of the stories I hope that people will share throughout the month of May through using those hashtags, which I will have up at the end as well, and throughout the video, the links. So let's start the conversations and keep them going. Thank you, Barbara.
Thanks so much. It's been wonderful talking to you, and I'm really excited about all of the conversations that we're going to have and seeing what happens this May, because so far we've had 6 green ribbon years. This is our 7th, and I think this is going to be our best yet.
And well done, you too. You know, I hope that you give yourself a good clap on the back for getting to where you are now. You're certainly, as I said already, an inspiration to us, and we need more conversations from people like yourself. Thanks a million, Barbara.
Thanks so much.